So had you seen this video before?
No, I hadn't.
I saw it. I think it was another class, but it could have been. I love TED Talks, so I kind of seek them out. So I'm not really sure where I'd seen it, but I've seen it before in the last year or so, and it's probably my favorite one.
Really?
Yeah, I love her. I think everything she says is so real for me. Like, I grew up middle class, white bread. You know, it is what it is. And I've always thought that I was well cultured, but I'm so not. You know what I mean? When you think about all of the things that I don't know, so much of it. I'll stop talking. What did you think of it?
I really enjoyed it. I had watched it twice now because it's so dense. She says so much in such a little amount of time. I think my favorite part is right in the beginning when she talks about loving reading as a child, because I loved reading as a child.
Uh-huh.
I don't have nearly as much time to read as I would like, but her saying that the books she read were about white children going on little adventures in wherever they're going, and that they ate, I think, ginger beer. They drank ginger
beer, yeah.
And she said that when she would write her stories, that all of her characters would go on adventures and drink ginger beer. She said, I've never had it. And it's such a profound way to say you are a direct representation of what you read as a child. I think so much, like, stories that are written for kids were written for me specifically as a white,
right?
And maybe even a little bit more for like a white male child. That's the predominant hero characters, that white male child. So that was a really profound thought that I hadn't considered, but made perfect sense, and I was just embarrassed to not have thought of it before then.
Well, and I think that's why so many young girls, certainly in my generation and some beyond, were tomboys. I mean, because we read those stories about Christopher Robin and Peter Pan, and it was all about the young white male. So I mean, at least for me, I was so not a girly girl. I was such a tomboy. I watched this TED Talk. I actually have it saved because I watch it pretty regularly, just as a reminder, because I think it's something that I need to work on as a human. Like, I want to work on this trait of myself, because I think the idea of the single story, I think we get this everywhere, especially like in election years. Like, I think the political media is hopeful that we only hear the one story. Like, they're trying to dictate our vote based on the idea of I'm gonna make up this trash ad about someone, and it's what you're going to believe. So if you don't take it that one step further and find out what really is going on with this candidate, you won't know, because the special interest groups are allowed to make these campaign videos that just smear everyone. So like I try to do more research and not let that be the one story.
And I think, to your point, it's easy sometimes to be apathetic. It's easier to just kind of go on with your day because there's so much happening in your day that you just, it's easier to be apathetic.
Well, and I don't have to think about it. So if I can buy into the commercial I saw on TV that this is going to make me a better person, or I need to eat kale because it's whatever that story is, if I can buy into it, then I don't have to think about it. I don't have to do research. I'm okay with it. And it's what I think is what she's trying to say is the danger of that is you start eating kale, which I think is nasty. But or thinking that I can't even think of an example.
I think in terms of social justice,
yeah.
I work in schools, and I work in a school that is a very diverse school. It's a high language learning school. People are coming from Mexico, all over, and it's sometimes difficult to work with those students because I am not prepared personally to help them, and all I want to do is help them. But I so appreciate being in that environment, because if I was in the rich white school environment, that would be it. So I feel like, and I only recently moved to Denver. I've been in Denver for like a year and 2 months.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But being here now and in just kind of submerged in all of those different cultures and different, ideas has been really good for me, because I've not focused on that single story nearly as much as in the past, because I'm not speaking to a population or not speaking about a population as a population. I'm speaking about them as, my friend V, or my my friend Amir. It's different when it's up close and personal, which I think is more really to her point.
Yeah, I used to I moved to Utah in June, so I was in Denver, and so I used to do junior achievement. Are you familiar with junior achievement? Yes, so we used to do JA in a day as a thing that a community event we did for the bank, and so I would always teach the Spanish speaking kindergarten class. Like, I asked for that class, and it was the one nobody wanted to teach because the kids, of course, don't understand me. They speak Spanish. But I loved interacting with those group of kids, and I did it every year for about 7 years. The same teacher, and we would talk about, she loved that I would come do it, because she would say that most white people would not come to her class. Like, if she got someone to come, it was someone who was usually Spanish speaking. But it was good for the kids to meet people who didn't speak Spanish, who didn't cater to them, in her words, and made it to where we had to have visual conversation. Now, over the 7 years, I learned a tiny bit of Spanish in order to, interact with the kids a little bit. But, it's just fascinating to me that, I grew up in Texas. There were a lot of Spanish-speaking people where I grew up, but I never thought about them as individuals. I just didn't, because I didn't interact with them at all. They were just the Mexicans, So it is really, for me, this topic, I purposefully watch this video over and over again because it makes me ashamed. You know what I mean? So I want to be guilted into, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And it's not necessarily your guilt, but it's you being present in the knowledge that
your opportunities afforded you certain other opportunities that maybe others are not, gifted. So
and she says something that's one of my favorite lines in the video is patronizing, well-meaning pity. It's like, and that is so like how I grew up. Like, you should feel bad for them, they don't have something. Like, I was told that same thing. Eat your dinner. So-and-so, China, they're starving people in China, right? Like, we heard that growing up, and it was, and I honestly don't think that my mother had any care at all about the starving children across the planet. She just wanted me to eat my dinner. But I think it's, we grew up thinking that patronizing, well-meaning pity was something we should do, that we should actively seek out and pity others. You know what I mean? And hearing that it's a bad thing. I mean, this video really opened my eyes in a lot of ways. And I'm 47 years old, so, it's a little late in the coming, but I don't know. I love this video.
No, I think that's a great point. Because, I mean, it's interesting because if you're not, if you're not having well-meaning pity, then what thoughts are you having? And I think replacing that with the thought of, well, these people go to school, these people want the best for their family, these people have talents,
Yeah.
it is so much more human to name a name and have knowledge about the person, and then that person is no longer a stranger or an other. They are and that kind of ties into, I think this week, what was I reading this week? Oh no, it was last week. The idea of the other. And
exactly. And starting your story with secondly, and I think so those two pieces, the well-meaning pity and starting with secondly, not only are they poor or immigrants or Spanish speaking, but what's the other thing that you can talk about? Those kids at Force Elementary they're just amazing little humans, and they're happy and just so they want the knowledge, and they're like little sponges. I mean, they're kindergartners, so they're sponges, right? We had a great time, and I gave everybody $1, so because it was at the bank, so it was like the lesson was about money, and identifying the different coins, right? So yeah, I mean, it was just so much fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this is I was so excited to see it. This TED Talk. Yeah. So awesome. Well, are we good?
I think we're good.
I think we're good too.
I was trying to think of what else I wanted to say about
I know. I don't.
But like I said, you could definitely tell she's a writer, because the way her words blend, as a wannabe writer myself, the way her words blend are just it's ear candy to hear.
I know it is. She's amazing, and
yeah, she's great.
She says things like she reads that quote about their people without heads, and their eyes and their mouths are in their breasts, and she's like, I laugh every time. I'm like, but you're not laughing.
Yeah.
It's like, but I love the way she says things. Like, I noticed that she says, again, different than me, a man called John Locke, whereas I would say a man named John Locke. You know what I mean? So I love that. And I think the other piece that really resonated with me is she says, I didn't consciously identify as African. Like, I don't think I consciously identify as well off or white or a woman, like I don't think about it. Like, I've always just been who I am, and not that I'm different.
And I wonder if that's because when I was a couple years ago, I traveled to the UK and Switzerland for 6 months. And I think I identified more as a white female American in the UK and Switzerland than I had ever identified.
Right here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's just suddenly being uprooted from what you know and placed somewhere else is when you begin to identify with, because everything else was different. I was in the UK, so, and part of it was, they were asking me questions, and that was when the election was starting, so it was kind of a mess.
Yeah.
But kind of a mess. But it's interesting how that part of me was not activated or realized until I was out of that environment.
Right. Yeah. And that's where she said she didn't realize it until she went to university. Yeah. But it's just, I try to think now when I meet new people or I hear stories, I'm always trying to think of, well, what's the other side of that? So, and that's what this whole video is for me, is a constant life personally.
I really loved her, back to her writing bit a little bit, but when she was in college and her professor said her story was not authentically African because it's not his picture.
His version, yes. Well, it made me think.
It cracked me up, and it was so sad. It cracked me up. It was so sad.
It made me think, who determines authenticity?
I know, yeah.
Whose version of it? I mean, and then it takes you to, the victor writes the history, or, so like, who really, I mean, I would want to say, have you ever been there? Like,
right.
Do you know? And did you go one place or did you go 20 places? You know, because there's always that person that, you know, they go to Iraq like one time in their 20s and then they know all about it.
Yeah.
Because they went one, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's funny. I don't know.
yeah. It's interesting.
It is. It's interesting.
But it's an awesome TED Talk. It really, really was.
It really is. It's one of my absolute favorites. When